Some messages only reach us when the human psyche is fully ready, and not a moment before. You might feel it right now, a quiet nudge, an unsettling sense that this specific moment is meant for you, even if you cannot yet logically explain why. Imagine a letter lying unopened for many years suddenly falling into your hands, or a clock that always ticked unnoticed that now strikes loudly in the silence. It is like a door you passed countless times that today feels completely impossible to ignore. This experience is not rare because of the words it contains. It is rare because of when it is finally landing in your consciousness. Most people walk past moments like this without ever registering them because their awareness isn't prepared. It is not about being special or part of an elite few. It is entirely about timing. If what you are hearing feels strangely personal, almost intrusive, it is because something deep within you has reached a significant threshold, a saturation point where the psyche is finally listening. There is a quiet inevitability to this awareness, a subtle tension that asks you to pay attention without flattery and without ego inflation. The psyche only responds to what it is ready to recognize, and now, without any announcement, that recognition has begun. Timing is never truly accidental. Life does not deliver profound insight randomly or reward those who chase it the hardest. According to Jung, the unconscious presents material only when it is ready to be integrated into the self. Ideas, experiences, and messages may appear repeatedly across the years, but they only truly land once the inner conditions are perfectly aligned. Insight arrives late, not early after resistance has softened and after the mind has exhausted its typical deflection. Meaning cannot be demanded. It emerges organically from a readiness that is entirely internal. When something feels as if it has come to you at the perfect moment, it is not luck. It is evidence that your inner world has shifted enough to receive it. The psyche filters everything constantly, and only what resonates with current inner tension finally breaks through the surface. Before this readiness reaches conscious awareness, it announces itself subtly, quietly preparing you. As you notice this, you are entering the threshold where observation becomes true understanding and timing becomes psychological rather than random. There is often a moment when what once felt urgent quietly loses its pull, and it happens without drama or explanation. Goals that used to organize your days no longer generate energy. Ambitions you worked toward for years feel strangely distant, as if they belong to someone you once were. It can feel like standing on a stage after the audience has already left, lights still on, script memorized, but no reason to continue performing. Or it is like holding a map whose destinations no longer spark curiosity, while the compass spins without settling on a direction. This phase is commonly misread as laziness, burnout, or a personal failure to stay motivated. However, psychologically, it signals something far more precise. From a Jungian perspective, the psyche invests energy only where meaning is still alive. When a path has fulfilled its psychological function, the unconscious withdraws its fuel. Motivation fades not because you are broken, but because the work of that specific direction is complete. What drains you now once sustained you, and that contrast is deeply unsettling. The shadow tension here is fear that disengagement means stagnation, regression, or wasted time. The mind rushes to fix the feeling, to choose a new goal quickly, or to recreate momentum at any cost. But forcing direction at this stage only multiplies exhaustion, because you are trying to animate something the psyche has already released. Jung observed that neurosis often emerges when consciousness insists on continuing a direction that no longer carries meaning. Non-attachment in this phase is not a collapse, it is preparation. The loss of interest is not emptiness but a clearing of the way. Energy is being conserved and redirected, though the new orientation has not yet reached awareness. This is why the period feels ambiguous rather than inspiring. You are between investments. When you stop fighting the disengagement, something subtle happens. Attention sharpens. Without the noise of old pursuits, perception becomes more sensitive. Small details stand out and emotional reactions deepen. You begin noticing what affects you now, not what used to. This quiet withdrawal is the psyche creating space for a different orientation to emerge. One that cannot appear while the old map is still being followed. As the old directions quietly loosen their hold, something else begins to sharpen, almost imperceptibly at first, until it becomes impossible to ignore. What follows is a heightened sensitivity to meaning and falsehood, a subtle but relentless recalibration of the inner senses. Conversations that once felt neutral now sound strangely hollow, as if words are being spoken without landing anywhere real. Familiar routines feel louder than they should, like static humming beneath daily life. Environments that once felt tolerable suddenly irritate, not because they are objectively worse, but because the psyche has become less willing to filter out what lacks authenticity. It can feel like stepping into bright light after a long period of darkness, or realizing that clothes you've worn for years no longer fit your body. Nothing external may have changed, yet everything feels slightly off, misaligned, and thin. From a Jungian perspective, this shift occurs as unconscious material rises closer to awareness. When deeper layers of the psyche begin to stir, they demand congruence. The inner world becomes more honest, and the outer world is quietly measured against that honesty. What once passed unnoticed now feels unbearable. This is not out of superiority or judgment, but because the psyche is fine-tuning its signal. This sensitivity is not about becoming fragile. It is about becoming precise. However, this phase often carries a shadow tension that can be difficult to name. Irritability may surface along with a desire to withdraw or isolate. You may find yourself pulling back from people, places, or conversations without fully understanding why, then questioning whether you are becoming intolerant or cold. In truth, the psyche is learning discernment before separation. It is testing what resonates and what merely fills space. This can feel lonely because fewer things pass the internal threshold now, and the mind may interpret this narrowing as loss. Yet, this sensitivity is not meant to trap you in isolation. It is a preparatory pressure, an internal sorting process that clarifies what carries meaning and what does not. The more you resist it, the louder the discomfort becomes. But when you observe it without forcing conclusions, it reveals its purpose. The psyche is compressing, gathering energy, and reducing noise so that what truly matters can finally be heard. This growing intolerance for the superficial is not a flaw to correct, but a signal that something deeper is organizing itself beneath the surface, quietly building pressure, and preparing to move from refined sensitivity into an undeniable inner demand for change. As this sensitivity sharpens and the noise of the superficial falls away, it often gives rise to a new and more unsettling experience, an internal pressure without clear direction. It can feel like something inside you is insisting, urging, and pushing forward, yet offering no instructions about where to go or what to do. There is a sense of urgency without an object, like water slowly building behind a dam, increasing its weight against the structure while remaining perfectly still on the surface. You may notice your breath subtly held throughout the day, or a restless energy in the body that cannot be discharged through familiar actions. It is like standing at a crossroads where every path is blurred and marked by no signs, only the unmistakable feeling that remaining exactly as you are is no longer possible. This pressure is often mistaken for anxiety or impatience, but psychologically it is something else entirely. From a Jungian perspective, this is psychic energy accumulating because it cannot yet be expressed consciously. The psyche knows that a reorganization is underway, but the conscious mind has not caught up to its shape or meaning. The tension does not demand immediate action, it asks for sustained attention. When movement is forced at this stage, the energy disperses into impulsive decisions, drastic changes, or symbolic gestures that relieve pressure temporarily, but leave the deeper configuration untouched. This is the shadow tension of this phase, the temptation to act simply to escape discomfort. Quitting, confronting, escaping, or reinventing oneself overnight can feel compelling. Yet these reactions often drain the very energy needed for genuine transformation. The psyche is not asking you to choose yet. It is asking you to contain. Stillness here is not passivity but discipline. It is the ability to hold intensity without resolution, to let the pressure reorganize itself internally until clarity emerges organically. When you allow this compression without trying to interpret or solve it, patterns begin to form beneath the surface. Images, thoughts, and intuitions slowly align, not through effort, but through patience. This phase teaches a crucial lesson on the soul path. Urgency does not always mean movement. Sometimes it signals that something essential is assembling itself out of sight. By resisting the impulse to react, you preserve the energy long enough for it to reveal its true direction. What initially felt like unbearable pressure gradually becomes a quiet certainty, a sense that something is being recognized rather than invented. From this containment and held intensity, the next shift naturally unfolds, carrying you from raw pressure into a clearer recognition of what has been forming within you all along. As the pressure settles and attention sharpens, a new awareness often arrives unexpectedly, a sudden sense of, "This is about me." It may emerge in a book, a conversation, a video, or even a casual remark overheard that hits with uncanny precision. Words that once seemed abstract or general now resonate with a strange intimacy, as if underlined by a hand you do not recognize. There is a lingering quality, like a mirror that holds your gaze too long, reflecting not only your features but an interior movement you had barely sensed. This is not identification or ego inflation, it is resonance, the unconscious signaling recognition of a pattern or task already active within you. From a Jungian perspective, the psyche responds to symbols that reflect its current processing. When something feels pointedly for you, it is because it mirrors an internal process that has been silently unfolding long before your conscious mind could name it. Shadow tension can arise here, as it is easy to mistake this resonance for specialness or privilege. The subtle danger lies in inflation, the belief that being addressed marks superiority rather than readiness. Soul Path guidance reframes the experience. This awareness is not about identity but about responsibility. The message does not confer status, it calls for discernment, presence, and participation. It asks that you notice, reflect, and allow what is stirring within to manifest thoughtfully, rather than rushing to action or claiming ownership. The moment is brief yet significant, a juncture where recognition meets readiness and insight begins to take form without coercion. The psyche signals that the internal work is aligning with external stimuli, inviting conscious acknowledgement. By observing without inflating, you prepare for the embodiment of what has been gestating within, allowing the previous phases of subtle disengagement, heightened sensitivity, and internal pressure to coalesce into a lived understanding. It is the bridge between knowing and acting, between psychic resonance and grounded responsibility, marking the threshold where attention is no longer curiosity alone, but conscious engagement. From this recognition naturally flows the next stage, embodiment, where insight transforms into lived alignment and subtle readiness becomes tangible in thought, action, and relational presence. As the subtle signals of readiness settle, invite yourself to simply notice what arises in the body, the easing of tension, the quiet steadiness in posture, and the sense that certain impulses no longer pull at you. There is no need to act, decide, or interpret. The mind can rest while the psyche observes its own alignment. Life may feel slower and quieter, but heavier with purpose, a gravity that is not oppressive but clarifying. This is the moment when timing reveals itself, not as urgency but as honesty. It is a stabilizing force that asks for presence rather than speed. Breath, posture, and awareness become the instruments through which readiness is recognized and embodied. What is required now is not action but reception, observing where resistance has softened and where life flows with less friction. Readiness does not rush, it stabilizes. It is in this embodied pause that the internal work converges with external alignment, where prior phases of subtle loss, sensitivity, pressure, and recognition become felt in the body as clarity, calm, and quiet authority. The psyche has prepared, and the conscious self can follow without forcing the process. Most people will scroll past this message without noticing, not because it lacks value, but because their inner conditions are not yet attuned to receive it. Timing, not judgment, determines resonance. This is not failure or missed opportunity. It is simply the natural unfolding of readiness. The message is important not because it exists in content, but because it lands at the precise moment the psyche is prepared to integrate its signal. Recognizing this teaches patience, humility, and trust in the inner process. There is no exclusivity in what unfolds, only the alignment between inner readiness and outer presentation. This awareness invites participation without ego, insight without inflation, and responsibility without urgency. This is Echoes of Psyche, where meaning appears not when you search for it, but when you're finally ready to live it.